I just want to welcome everybody to today's session, which is called Minimalism, hosted by Adam Yasmin. My name is Jennifer Norman. I'm the founder of the Human Beauty Movement, and we're also known as the HBM. The HBM is all about the beauty of mind, body, and soul well-being. So that's why we bring you these kinds of special programs and workshops so that we can tap into that greater mindfulness and conscious living. I'm so honored to introduce you to Adam Yasmin. Adam is a former UX designer turned digital wellness coach. He knows a lot about the inside scoop on tech. And so he's going to share a little bit of that with you. He's also a strong advocate of slow tech as a means to wellness because of his experience. And I'm just so pleased that he's here to share his knowledge and his wisdom with you. So I'll turn it over to you, Adam. You now have the floor.
Thanks so much, Jen. And thank you to everyone for being here. What I'd like to do is just have a really quick check-in or a drop-in, I should say. And if you're comfortable to, it's up to you if you'd like to leave your camera on or off, or you can mute your microphones, just wherever you happen to be sitting, or perhaps you were reclining like I was about 5 minutes ago. Feel comfortable to close your eyes, kind of keep your feet firmly on the ground, or if you're sitting cross-legged or lying down, that's fine. But just close your eyes and drop into just noticing yourself breathing. And if you're here in Southern California, chances are you're going to be hearing raindrops outside. Perhaps you're by the window like I am. All we need to do is just pay attention to the fact that we're just here breathing. Especially in my case, I'm just here to regulate my heart rate and just arrive. Some of us may be relaxed, some of us may be tense. Either way, it's just an opportunity to show up exactly as we are and just pay attention to our breath. And as we notice ourselves breathing, we can get into a cycle of inhaling through our nostrils, exhaling through our nostrils or through our mouths, kind of elongating the inhales and the exhales as we go with each breath. And while we can pay attention to our breath, we can also start to notice other sensations in the body, like our heart rate, or if you're thirsty, or if you had just eaten something, or maybe you had a cup of tea or coffee this morning, or perhaps you had some lunch. Just feel the body doing its thing. And also start to pay attention to some sounds you may have around you, like the raindrops. Perhaps there's other people in the house. Just notice where you are in your environment. Let's do 3 more breaths. Maybe you can extend the inhale a little bit longer. Maybe you can pause for a few seconds once you reach that full inhale. You could even make an exhale with a little bit of a sigh. Perhaps a yawn can be squeezed in there between these inhales and exhales, just allowing the body to just self-regulate. I know I need it the most right now. So when you feel comfortable, you can open your eyes. Just notice where you are and what's around you. See if you can notice three things. Perhaps it's a color, a shape, a texture. Maybe it's the computer screen in front of you or the tabletop or the color of the sky outside if you're sitting by a window. Again, this is just a grounding check-in. Thanks for doing that with me. Again, thank you for your extended patience. And I also would like to remind everyone that this is a communal space. I'm not here to give you a slideshow presentation or give you too much, just inundate you with a lot of information. I want this to be an engaged, an interactive space. So if you'd like to maybe type in the chat window how that grounding check-in was for you, feel free to do so. Or if you'd like to, raise a hand and share something as well. For me, again, just in an extra bit of transparency, just feeling like I was for a few minutes just kind of running with like a headless chicken for a moment and arriving. It was a humbling opportunity to just remind me exactly where I am. So I set the session up to discuss minimalism when it comes to our relationships with our devices. And I don't think there's any one solid definition of minimalism. There's one aspect where minimalism extends probably from Eastern philosophies, from Buddhism, from Taoism. I'd like to bring it into this, into a kind of a current context where we kind of distill it down to the less is more aspect of it. And I believe that from the research that I've done and the experiences that I've had with it, that it really can be condensed down to less is more. Is more. It's like kind of the simplest and most direct definition. So what does less is more have to do with our devices? On the one hand, we may be existing as individuals or families or households or offices in a kind of dance of devices. There's a laptop that's in front of me. I have a phone by my side. I have these earbuds in my ear. I have this microphone in front of me. There's already several devices going on here. And it's not better or worse to have more or less. It's just something to notice. Some of us wear wearables on our bodies, whether it's a Fitbit or an Apple Watch. As an example, there are rings, there are other wearable devices that we have on our person to generate metrics, to learn about ourselves. Some people have other smart devices, like there's mattresses and there's other objects, some everyday objects that are imbued with sensors and tech, again, to generate metrics so that we learn about ourselves and improve our health and well-being through that kind of metric-driven, goal-oriented process. So I bring that up just to take stock in in the, let's say, maybe the amount of devices that you may have in your day-to-day life. And again, you can take stock in it personally, kind of keep it in mind in your head. You can write it down on a piece of paper if you happen to have any paper or writing utensil nearby. Perhaps you want to add it into the chat. Again, just there's no judgment around the numbers, just something to share so that maybe it could be a conversation that we can have later in the session. For instance, for me personally, I spent a few months with a watch. I think it was an Apple Watch as a someone who really subscribes to the Apple ecosystem devices. And after a few months of use, I thought to myself, this is unnecessary for me. And I decided that because for me, it created more noise, more distraction, more opportunities to look at a screen, to fiddle with, to try and toggle the settings. And I was like, oh, this is creating more distraction and noise for me personally. So again, whatever the reasons you may have, there are no right or wrong reasons. They're just your reasons. You know, it's an entirely subjective experience again, our aim is to improve our lives through the relationships of these devices. I'd say most importantly right now, given that so many of us are living with smartphones, myself with an iPhone, I would like to kind of offer in this session in this sort of series of these talks around minimalism, to kind of offer a sort of base template to be able to utilize aspects of minimalism in your day-to-day life in relationship to, let's say, our phones. Let's start with our phones. And I also want to share that a great resource to read, to have a check-in with, is a book called Digital Minimalism. I could write it in the chat, actually. It's called Digital Minimalism by Cal Newport. And this book I read at the beginning of lockdown, when we were like using our phones like a lot. And for good reason too, just to stay connected, to be informed, to enrich our connections to the outside world and our relationships with the people around us, or the people who aren't around us who we want to stay connected to. So I read this book, Digital Minimalism by Cal Newport, and it was a very compelling, historically contextual book about our relationship to our devices or smartphones, especially through the lens of discussing social media use. And I don't want to spoil the book for you, because I'd like for you to read it or to listen to it if you like audiobooks like I do. But I'd like to bring into this space what's suggested in the book, which is a 30-day social media detox, really a device detox, so that you really pull back and gain a lot of perspective over your habits and the relationship to the device or to certain platforms. And when you're engaged in that digital detox, as it's called, you have a check-in group. You know, you're not doing it alone. It's kind of like how we engage perhaps in exercise regimens, you know, have a buddy system or an accountability partner kind of helps that process. There's a similar process that's suggested in digital minimalism. The biggest takeaway I got from the book was that an ask like that in the midst of a global pandemic is an impossible ask, because so much of our lives, over the last 3 years, were moved onto these devices, again, for good reason. We were able to immediately do workouts and dance classes and talk to counselors or therapists or doctors, and family members and friends, and have meetings, through Zoom classes or through these other meeting spaces. The fact that so much digital transformation happened in such a quick amount of time was both impressive and kind of dystopic at the same time. Again, I'm just saying that from a subjective perspective. I want to use these words with a grain of salt. So again, like I said, the suggestion of a 30-day device detox was compelling, but it was an impossible. I still think today, 3 years into this, pandemic, and whatever this new normal is, it's an impossible ask. But it's still important to consider what digital detoxing can look like for you. It doesn't have to be 30 days. It doesn't even have to be a week or a vacation. It could be a daily ritual that you engage with yourself as a solo exploration. It could be a buddy system thing. It could be a weekly Sabbath or an unplug, maybe on Sundays or on Saturdays. It could be a day where you want to go spend the day in the park versus being at home. It's whatever the reason is, and whatever the amount of time it is. I think it's a powerful and important exploratory experimental process. So that's something I wanted to mention, kind of early on in this session, is where do we learn about minimalism from this tech perspective? And that's one place that was really important for me to be able to draw from to have this conversation. I'm currently listening to a book right now called Attention Span by Dr. Gloria Mark. I'll write that down. And that's very confronting and important information. She is a 20 plus year researcher and psychologist who's been studying and now starting to report on our individual and collective attention spans, living with the devices and the tech that we live with today, and how at this current moment in time right now, us today in late February in 2023, our average attention spans with devices is around 47 seconds until we start to switch devices or go to something else. And we take that we do what we will with that information. It's not meant to generate anxiety or fear, but it's just, I feel that information is empowering, and when that information empowers you, then it's your choice, your opportunity to catalyze that information into an act or an experiment or a habit change. So there's something I'd like to focus on for the rest of our time here, and when it comes to specifically our phones. I'm going to remove the blur just to make that easier to see. So I'd say the first thing I'd like to offer is, depending on whatever phone you're using, I find it really empowering to have a really sort of clean background, a background where that just, you feel like, again, the choice of an image or information, if it's a picture of your family or something, whatever the image may be, it invites you into a state of mind, whatever that state of mind is that you want to be setting up for yourself. It really starts with as soon as you see it, because we pick up our phones and we look at them something like around 70 times per day these days. So it's really important on a very subtle level that we set ourselves up constantly to either engage in the acts that we want to accomplish and pursue with our devices, if we're going to be setting goals or tasks for ourselves, to start with an image or a background that I think ideally that doesn't promote that kind of cluttered, busy kind of feeling. That's me personally, but I also think can be really useful to share. And I want to double down on that by saying that when it comes to, so that's your locked screen, right? That's just the pickup. That's the locked screen. When it comes to your home screen, I find that having space, utilizing space in your home screen will again continue to make it less of a it won't be a stressful interaction, with, again, this thing that we go to and we look at throughout the day, every day. It's such a subtle thing. I personally, I use a lot of folders to organize apps by categories. Some people do it by color. Some people do it, you can organize your apps, again, for any reasons, with any sort of categorical process. But for me, what I find to be really important is this negative space. It's just having something where it's just a beautiful hue. It's a beautiful gradient. It's a beautiful color that I can rest in between looking at everything else on the phone. So it's a really subtle thing, but it's something I'd like to offer, into this discussion. And that's we're not even going into like talking about notifications or, again, do I give consent to the device to go for my attention? I mean, that's a next step thing. But it really starts with, it's this simple. Like, I like using negative space and categorizing apps into folders. That makes me feel comfortable. It makes me feel that things are possible, that I can perform the tasks, that I can use the device with intention, as opposed to I open my phone and where is this thing? I don't know where the thing is. I start to swipe looking for it, and then it creates this hamster wheel feedback loop experience for me. The same thing goes for our desktops, whether we use laptops or desktop computers. If your desktop screen is full of tiles, again, there's no judgment here. It's not your, bad versus good. It's what is your experience? Just really ask yourself, what am I experiencing? How am I feeling when I open my computer or unlock my phone? And what am I feeling right away? And if you can be aware, again, developing that kind of awareness, it takes practice. And a practice, like they say, 1,000-mile journey begins with a single step. So it's really just habituating this process of self-inquiry and self-reflection as we decide, I'm using this tool to perform these tasks, A, B, C, D, E. It's not just that I'm lost in my screen and I'm distracted and I don't know where things are and I'm swiping and it just becomes this kind of opaque and confusing experience. Again, sometimes I may be in a mind state or awash in feelings where I'm already in that state. And so, regardless of how I organize my device, if I go in there without self-regulating myself, then I'm going to have that kind of disorienting experience regardless. Again, that's just another habit of self-inquiry and kind of EQ or emotional intelligence. I can recognize that, oh, I'm having that experience. It's probably best that I put everything away and close the computer and step away and go engage in whatever self-care I can engage in, whether it's eat a piece of dark chocolate, drink a glass of water, have a cup of tea, go outside, have a cathartic experience, like here in our household, with our daughter, we really invite a lot of um physical sort of self-regulating experience where we could we call it mushy time. We just like let's hit a pillow or the couch or something that can absorb that kind of energy. Again, it's just about being able to move, recognize the energy and be able to do something with it. That was a little bit of a tangent, so forgive me. So that's really the first thing I wanted to focus on, is just, it's such a subtle first step thing, which is the lock screen and the home screen, and what state does it get you in? I want to pause and invite folks to chime in. Again, you can do so, unmute your microphone, you can type it in the chat. Maybe there are moments you like, or a story or something you'd like to share, or a question that you may have. But just to put that out there to start with like these sort of basic steps. Okay, thank you for adding a couple of these things. Negative space, turning off notifications. Thank you. Please. Yes, Grace, right?
Yes. I do agree with you about like putting the apps in folders, because just having all the apps on my screen is very distracting. And also, if somehow I can turn off the extra notifications on these things, that's very distracting too.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing. By default, the way these things are designed, apps are incentivized to throw notifications at you. And again, it's not like because they're evil or they're bad. It's because they require our attention. Like we may be subscribing to something or using something for free that really it's our attention and eyeballs for advertisers in a public space, like, a social media platform, that may be the incentive. So without really thinking about it, we automatically consent to these terms. So it's, the responsibility is always shirked onto us to really do our due diligence and figure out how to silence or turn these notifications off. Right. An app purge is actually a really great first option. If you purge all your apps, or again, maybe the superfluous ones. Again, there are apps that we use that, again, have a lot of use, but maybe we can use these things on our computers as opposed to on our phones, so that we're not spending so much time on the phone. These are all values and goals that we, again, subjectively have for ourselves, that depending on how we want to relate to the phones, we can decide, oh, I'm going to only surf the web on my computer, but not on my phone, so I can spend less time on the phone, right? These are just value propositions that we have for ourselves. Did you have anything else you wanted to add, Grace?
What is the app purge that somebody just put in the chat? What does that mean?
Yes. So, Catherine, thanks for writing. I'm going to get to your question in just a second. So an app purge is really just, I'm going to delete all my apps, right? That's one way to get rid of all the notifications, and then sit with that and then figure out what are the most important apps that I need to have on my phone. What is what is the basis of my relationship with the device, and what apps do I want on there to be able to use with intention, or things that I need, what's needed that I can allow to come back in. That's basically that's the kind of the foundation of what an app purge is. A purge is just like, it's kind of like, I'm going to gather all these, clothes that I want to donate to Goodwill, and that's a purge, right? So it's kind of the same idea there. So, Catherine, what's your question?
Sorry, I was looking for I'm on my phone.
That's okay.
So my question, Adam, is I find that I have my phone bedside, and I am on it at night, and when I wake up in the morning, if I don't feel like getting up, I am reaching for my phone. And so your suggestions, and I don't feel comfortable like leaving it somewhere not near me. Not because I'm jonesing for my phone, but I have a daughter who, is out of town. And so as a parent, I want to be reachable. I do silence it so I can, but any suggestions about that aspect of having the phone, trying to disengage from the phone a little bit more. So I'd appreciate any thoughts you have about that.
That's a great question, and thank you for asking. My go-to with bedside phone is that having it bedside is, again, I don't want to say this in terms of, it's not a judgment, it's not a good versus bad. I just want to share that having it bedside means that it's going to pry for your attention, whether is it silenced or not? Is it on airplane mode or not? Is it going to be pinging? I get that. And I know my daughter's 7, so we live at home together, but I can assume that having a child living out of the house somewhere else, it's going to be a different experience. But having a bedside means that whatever it's going to do on the regular can be stressful because you're in bed. So I would think about, if I want my daughter to be able to reach me, do I have a house line that she can call, that the house phone can ring? Is the house phone in the bedroom or out of the bedroom? That's just one question to think about. There's also, I don't know what phone you're using, but for instance, with iPhones, there are do not disturb and focus modes. There are different kinds of do not disturb modes that would you can really customize in a really granular, really specific, it's a specific recipe, for an experience.
So Adam, can you speak, I know how to turn off my notifications, but I don't know the other things you spoke about, focus, and what was the other mode? I have an iPhone.
Okay, so if you go, just an example, if you go into settings on your phone, I know it's backwards right now. Down here from the top, there's something called focus. See that? If you go into focus, you have these different modes. There's do not disturb, there's driving, there's personal, there's sleep, and there's work. And so there's a lot. So they've embedded, again, with a lot of feedback and a lot of demand, and probably a lot of research as well.
Sorry.
That's okay. They've baked into the operating system these settings, these do not disturb settings, so that you can silence everything but your daughter calling. You can prevent all these other notifications from impacting your sleep, which is sacred. Except if your daughter's in an emergency and that's the only way to reach you, then that's what's going to ring. But just knowing that I've set that up for me so that I can feel at rest and relaxed. And I'm not going to, I'm not going to be, it's not like a woodpecker kind of a thing where suddenly all these other things start binging. So these are that's would be a really great opportunity to look at those different settings and to figure out a one that's going to work best for you when it comes to having the phone in your room. The fact of having the phone in the room is that if you don't toggle those settings, it's just an invitation to put you in like, somewhat of a stressful, again, I'm not speaking to you directly, Catherine, but just in general, for those of us who are using our phones as alarm clocks and whatnot, there is, again, if we don't toggle airplane mode off and have these sort of boundaries that we've set up, if we just let it populate with notification alerts and stuff, then we've basically, with our heads on our pillows and looking at the phone the first thing in the morning, we haven't stretched, we haven't done anything or engaged in any self-care or sort of wake up routine. We're eating notifications for breakfast, and that can just be that could induce a lot of unnecessary stress while we're just barely awake.
Yeah.
So just something to think about.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And also I know I have monitored my use, and it's startling how you can get on an iPhone and you can find out what you're doing. And that is startling.
Yeah. So right beneath focus, there's something that says screen time, and that gives you a really important, either weekly or daily breakdown of your total phone usage or app specific usage. It could be broken down by category, by specific app, how much time you're on the device, again, sort of day by day, week by week. And again, they're oftentimes intimidating numbers, and they can induce a certain kind of judgment that we may place on ourselves. But let's just for context, as someone who's really been interested in this, digital habits and these our relationships to our devices, the average right now for any American, kind of regardless of age and demographic, right now is roughly about 5 or so hours per day. And that's been kind of incrementally going up, year over year. And obviously with the sort of, living through a pandemic, that time has exponentially gone up a lot. Whether that's a good or bad thing, that's for you to decide, for everyone to decide. And again, we may have different feelings about it day by day. We may feel about it while we're in lockdown and there's a wave of COVID happening versus like, oh, it's a summer day and I'm on vacation and I want to read a book on my phone. Does that mean I use my phone too much? Again, that's for you to decide. So while the information is important and you can utilize the information and the metrics to sort of catalyze a habit change or a decision, I don't think it's just the information, just the metric alone, as there needs more context in order to then kind of decide to make a change. So what I wanted to say, again, both in response to your question, Catherine, but also just in general, from a minimalist perspective of less is more, is that having some hard boundaries in our homes, like the boundary of the bedroom, phone out of the bedroom so that I can rest peacefully, so that I know that the phone is there waiting for me wherever I've left it plugged in overnight. And if I'm awake in the morning and I have a buffer zone to engage in whatever I need to do in the morning, if you live alone or if you live as a parent with small children, in my case, if I can wake up in the morning and tend to my daughter and get her ready for school and brush my teeth and drink some water and do some stretches and make her breakfast and get her to school, then I can go for my phone, after I've completed these tasks, and getting to the phone is a kind of reward for me to then I can, use my phone and do the task I need to do for the rest of the day. That's just kind of how I've set it up for myself. I know for me personally, if I'm using the phone first thing in the morning before I've done anything, it's hard to get out of it. I'm with it. It's on my person. It's with me at all times. It's in my pocket. The more I leave it somewhere plugged in, away from my body, the more opportunities I have to go to use it with intention, to be more mindful of what's happening, what am I responding to, what am I doing, and what's the goal here. Again, it's just a little bit of a boundary. I call it an elegant obstacle. That was a little bit of a tangent, but I hope it answered the question. I want to be respectful for all of our time because I know we have maybe just a few minutes left. But again, just the idea, as Jennifer wrote, earlier in this chat, of this app purge is a great way to remove the excess. Again, even if it's just cleaning up the screen so that there's less real estate taken up on the screen, so you can maybe use some negative space. You can, if a screen color or an image invites you into relaxation or maybe invites you into motivation, it's up to you to change those settings. Because we are kinetic human beings, right? We have different needs day to day, and the way we're able to toggle these settings can change day by day. And the more you know about the settings, and you can customize things to your needs. Sometimes those needs change, whether it's a day-to-day routine, or I'm on vacation, or I'm working on a big project. I want to remove distractions. There are ways to remove those distractions through these settings, through these other apps, through these other tools, and so on and so forth. So again, from a basic less is more perspective, utilize some negative space, perhaps do a purge of apps, definitely turn off all the unnecessary notifications. And it's up to you to decide what's necessary and unnecessary. When you sign up, when you install an app, it automatically wants to send you all the stuff that they want to send you because they want to keep you coming back. But it's your time and your attention and your goals, and it's your experience and it's your life. So you decide ultimately, do I want to consent to these default permissions, or do I want to take control and customize how I want to be experiencing my device? So I think that's a great place to start. And in the next session, I want to go into more beyond the phone itself. I definitely will keep going on the phone because it's such a universal touch point for everyone, because we all have smartphones. At least most of us do. I know some of us who decided to go more Luddite, simple phone, or dumb phone as they describe it. I don't think it's a friendly name. But they for some folks, they decided smartphone is too much. It's too distracting. It's too overwhelming. There's too much bad news. I'm going to get a smartphone out of my life and use a simpler phone that just texts, calls, and maybe has GPS or something, or I can, put music or podcasts in there or something, and that works for them. So, it's both an overwhelming and an exciting time to be alive right now, because we have a lot of control, for the most part, over our time and attention, should we choose to make those changes, and it's really it's a daily practice, so I want to pause there. I want to keep the floor open if there are any questions or comments. um, or stories or something you'd like to share. How did this information sit with you? Is there too much of something or not enough? Again, just for posterity.
I have to say, Adam, since I've been attending your sessions and you've been leading these sessions, that there have been a couple of things that have been really helpful, and it's so small, but it makes such a difference. And the first one I mentioned in the chat is that I no longer sleep next to my phone, and it really is so much more of a contribution to me getting better sleep. I don't know if a lot of people realize it, but it's almost like you've got a parasympathetic nervous system that almost knows if it's there, then it can address me. But if it's not there, then I can just fall into sleep and be fully asleep. The other thing is that when I go on walks with my dog around the neighborhood, I leave my phone at home. I used to always bring it with me just in case I needed to talk to somebody or text somebody or whatever. But being fully present in the moment has let me just be so much more attuned to nature and to appreciate things around me more. And so I really think that a lot of this is, just getting out of those habits that we've started to accumulate over time that really just add to those anxieties and the stresses of, always trying to be on rather than always being present. So wanted to just mention that. Has anybody
Thanks,
else? I saw some other folks mentioning some practices that they've utilized in the chat, and I was just wondering if anybody wanted to expand on those further.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention Amber's comment earlier in the chat. I use Do Not Disturb all the time and customize to who is allowed to get my attention. And that is a powerful thing. If you can use Do Not Disturb all the time so that most things will not be allowed to grab your attention, but you can customize, I can have, mom, him, her, they you could customize so that specific people or specific things, or like my email and these 3 people and these text messages can come and reach me at any time, but everything else has been made silent. And again, that's a powerful customization that is unique to your needs, your limits, your bandwidth, your capability. Like you mentioned a second ago, Jen, we've in the last 3 years, we've definitely soothed ourselves with these things. And it's just, again, whether that's good or bad, it's up to you to decide. And that may change day by day. But just the fact that we notice that I'm going into this to be entertained. I'm going into this to be inspired. I'm going into this to get information about whatever, the vote or climate change or something. And I feel like I'm kind of doom scrolling and I can't step away. And then suddenly, okay, full stop, put it down, step away, do something else. We've over time, these last few years, we've when I say we self-soothe with these things, we are at times, if no one's around, like the thing I'm going to try and co-regulate. I want to see if I could balance my nervous system with this thing. And there are ways that some people have meditation apps or guided meditations or breathing exercises that they do with headphones and their phone, whether they look at or just listen to. Again, there's a lot of capability there. But I'd say for most of us, and because we are human mammals, it's really best to co-regulate, if we want to co-regulate with other people, ideally in person, wherever possible. So, these things can't really, I don't know if you've seen that film, Her, with Joaquin Phoenix, where, like in some hypothetical future, people are really engaged in full-on, deep, intimate relationships with their phones or with their operating systems. Like that may be very well a possibility in the future. But without speculating, while we have these tools such as they are, it really behooves all of us to find the ways in which we can regulate ourselves, co-regulate with other people, with music, with a pet, with my cat, with a glass of water, with a cup of tea, with food, with a process, with a hobby, with walking in nature or stepping outside, even walking down the neighborhood, walking the dog. All these examples, there's an infinite number of ways to do that, and not to kind of fall into the habit of hoping that my phone can do that for me, because more often than not, it might not be able to. So I think I'll just kind of end on that piece. And again, just want to give thanks to everyone for being here, and for everyone who was so patient with me this afternoon. Again,
All
I
good.
apologize.
All good, Adam. Thank you so much for this session. I hope everybody enjoyed it. I really appreciate everybody coming on and being part of this. I will put into the chat a link where you can take a look and see more of the different sessions that we have coming up. There's some fascinating ones. And so on this wonderful Friday, I just want to wish you well. Have a beautiful weekend, and we hope to see you back here soon. Thank you.
Thank you.